The chamber of the Galactic Council had never known true silence until that moment. Delegates from 100 species, voices that once filled the air with constant chatter, now sat frozen. The great hall, built to echo the authority of civilizations, older than Earth itself, trembled with the weight of something unthinkable. A human warship had arrived, and not just any vessel. It was colossal, alive with power, and unmistakably built for war. It had emerged from the void like a predator stepping out of the shadows, its form casting a dark silhouette across the stars. For centuries, humanity had been dismissed as young, reckless, and fragile. Tonight, that illusion shattered. The counselors leaned forward in disbelief, their eyes reflecting the warship's gleam projected on the central hollow. No scans matched the vessel to any registered fleet. It wasn't part of the scattered colonies or Earth's known defense lines. This was something different, something hidden, something the humans had kept secret. The kind of secret that could tilt the balance of power in the galaxy. Whispers spread, but even whispers sounded like thunder in that stillness. Could it truly be theirs? Had the humans, so often patronized as latecomers to the stars, built such a weapon without anyone noticing? The ship's hull was angular and brutal, forged not for beauty, but for survival. Its very shape told a story. A people who had clawed their way through struggle, who built machines not to display wealth but to ensure existence. Along its flanks, weapons arrays hummed with restrained violence. Its engines burned with a steady pulse, daring anyone to challenge it. The Council could feel it, even across light years through the feed of their sensors. This was no ceremonial cruiser, no peace envoy. This was a warship, and a human one. Delegates exchanged glances. The Erek, with their translucent skin, shivered, visibly. The proud Tesh who ruled the border sectors clenched their jaws, their tendrils curling in unease. Even the Surat, whose fleets had never known defeat in 1,000 years, leaned back in their seats. It was not fear of humans they felt, but fear of what humans had proven themselves capable of creating when pushed. The unspoken question hung heavy in the chamber. If this was what humanity revealed today, what had they kept hidden yesterday? For so long the humans had been underestimated. They were survivors, yes, resilient even, but never seen as equals among the elder races. Their worlds were scarred by their own wars, their history a cycle of conflict and rebuilding. The Council had pitied them, sometimes even mocked them. Yet now, the evidence drifted before their eyes in cold metal. Humanity had not only survived their history, they had learned from it. Every line of armor, every silent cannon carried echoes of lessons written in fire and blood. The Council speaker's voice finally cracked the silence, though it trembled more than it commanded. "What is its purpose?" she asked. Her words echoed in translation across 100 tongues. No one answered. The humans present in the chamber, few in number, their faces unreadable, did not move. They did not explain. They simply watched the reactions unfold, their stillness more unnerving than any words. Rumors had long circulated of hidden human projects, fleets disappearing beyond mapped borders, strange energy signatures recorded and dismissed. But no one had imagined this scale. It was said that humans were bound by treaties, that their strength was contained, that their reach was still small. Yet here it was, a warship larger than some species' entire home fleets. And if one had been revealed, how many more were waiting? The chamber buzzed with barely contained panic. Species who had once been rivals now found themselves united in a single thought. Humanity could no longer be ignored. The balance of galactic power had shifted without warning, and none knew where it would land. Was this a declaration, a threat, or simply a demonstration that humans, at last, demanded to be seen? The human envoy stood slowly, their plain uniform, a sharp contrast to the flowing robes and jeweled garments of the others. No ornament, no grand insignia, just a single patch on the sleeve, the mark of Earth. Their presence alone quieted the room. No one could mistake the weight in their stance, the calm of someone who did not need to raise their voice to be heard. When they finally spoke, the chamber seemed to lean in as one. "We asked for a place among you. the envoy said, their tone steady, deliberate. We were told to wait. We were told we were too young, too fragile, too dangerous. Perhaps you were right. Perhaps we are all those things. But we are also something else. The silence deepened. The hollow of the warship rotated slowly above them, its silhouette impossible to ignore. We are human, the envoy continued, their gaze sweeping across the chamber. We do not forget. We do not forgive easily. And we do not kneel. Every species present felt the weight of those words settle into their bones. The council had always believed they controlled the game, that humanity was simply a new piece on the board. But the humans had just overturned the board entirely. The council speaker tried to respond, but her voice caught in her throat. For the first time in centuries, the most powerful assembly in the galaxy found itself speechless before a single people. And then, as if scripted by the universe itself, the warship moved. Its engines flared, bright enough to burn through the hollow feed, casting long shadows across the chamber. Every delegate leaned back as though the light itself might scorch them. The ship was not attacking, not firing, not advancing on any world, but its movement alone carried intent. It was alive, awake and aware that it was being watched. The envoy did not flinch, did not waver. We come not as beggars nor as slaves, they said, their voice ringing louder now. We come as equals. Remember that when you decide how to face us. Gasps rippled across the chamber. Some species recoiled in fear, others narrowed their eyes in anger. A few even allowed the faintest flicker of respect to cross their features. But before anyone could reply, the warship's signal cut. The hollow dissolved into darkness, leaving only the heavy silence of a council that had just seen its future change forever. And in that silence, one truth grew impossible to deny. Humanity had revealed its hand, but not its full strength. The galaxy had just glimpsed the edge of something vast, something dangerous, something unstoppable. The council trembled not because of what they saw, but because of what they could not yet imagine. What other secrets had the humans hidden among the stars? The answer, for now, remained in shadow. The lights of the chamber stayed dim after the human warship's image vanished, but the echo of its presence lingered like thunder long after a storm. Delegates still sat stiff in their places, their minds racing faster than their tongues. They had watched fleets rise and fall, seen empires burn, but nothing felt like this. A young species, one so often dismissed, had stepped out of the shadows carrying a weapon that no one had expected. The question pressing on every mind was simple but heavy. How did humanity build it without anyone knowing? The council had prided itself on watching everything. Networks of spies, endless trade pacts, and patrols stretched across the stars. Entire civilizations had been mapped before their first warp engines even fired. And yet humanity, who had barely been granted a token seat at the council table, had outmaneuvered them all. There was a reason the chamber trembled. It was not just fear of the warship's guns, it was fear of the unknown that came with it. If this was what the humans had revealed, what remained hidden? Some recalled the earliest days of contact. Humans had been bold then, too bold, speaking of partnership and cooperation, of sharing knowledge and building peace. But their history betrayed them. Wars, rebellions, endless conflict. The council had smiled politely and offered them limited trade routes, small recognition, always with the unspoken thought, better to keep them contained. The galaxy already had enough predators. Another one was not needed. Yet perhaps the council had misunderstood. Perhaps containment was never possible. Perhaps all this time the humans had been preparing. The human envoy had not sat back down after speaking. They remained standing, a still figure against the silent chamber. To the others, it was not arrogance that unsettled them, it was certainty. They looked like someone who had already decided their place in the galaxy, and was simply waiting for everyone else to accept it. Their silence now was more cutting than their words. Whispers turned into quiet debates along the curved rows of seats. The Eric muttered about preemptive strikes. The Surat scoffed and demanded to know how many more of these ships might exist. The Tesh whispered of alliances, suddenly questioning old rivalries. And through it all, the humans said nothing. They simply listened, letting fear and speculation do their work. Stories began to surface, ones long ignored. A colony disappearing beyond the rim without explanation. Mining fleets reporting strange, unidentified escorts that never answered hails. Odd energy readings in sectors believed to be abandoned. At the time, these reports had been brushed aside, labeled human mistakes, human exaggerations, or human lies. Now those same whispers returned with new weight. Perhaps they had never been lies at all. In the shadows of the chamber, a different fear began to grow. If the humans had built such a warship in secret, how had they done it? Where had they found the resources, the shipyards, the knowledge? No council race had shared their most guarded technologies with Earth. Every gift to humanity had been carefully measured, tightly controlled. Yet the ship on display had systems that outmatched even some of the oldest fleets. The idea that humans had done this alone gnawed at the delegates. And if they had not done it alone, then who had helped them? The envoy finally spoke again, but not to answer. Their words were quiet, steady, cutting through the noise like a blade. You look for answers. Perhaps you should be asking better questions. It was not a threat, but it was not comfort either. It was something else, a reminder that the humans controlled the flow of truth now. The council was no longer the one dictating the pace of revelation. Humanity had seized that power with the simple act of unveiling a ship. That shift of control was more terrifying than the weapons themselves. Beyond the chamber, beyond the council's core worlds, ordinary people would soon hear of this. Traders in the border systems, soldiers on long patrols, miners who had always mocked humans as reckless and fragile. They would all learn of the warship. Rumors would spread like fire, faster than official messages could contain. Entire civilizations would begin to wonder, if humanity could rise so quickly, who would they ally with? Who would they turn against? And most dangerously of all, what did they want? The answer remained hidden, cloaked as carefully as the ship's construction had been. The envoy gave no explanation, no numbers, no promises. The silence itself was the weapon. Each unanswered question turned into unease, each gap in knowledge a wound the council could not heal. For a species that had always valued certainty and control, being left in the dark was unbearable. Somewhere in that silence, the oldest counselors remembered fragments of human history they had studied. Not the grand wars or the victories, but the patterns. Humans thrived in pressure, in conflict, in being underestimated. Again and again their species had grown stronger through struggle. Every time they had been cornered, they had found a way out, often leaving their enemies shocked at the lengths they would go to survive. The warship was not an accident. It was the inevitable result of a people who had been forced to adapt faster than anyone thought possible. The envoy's gaze swept the chamber again, steady and unyielding. Their eyes seemed to hold not only the weight of their own life, but the weight of an entire species. A silent message passed through the chamber. Humans would no longer wait for permission to take their place in the galaxy. And then came the most unsettling thought of all. The ship had been revealed, yes, but it had not moved to attack. It had not even issued demands. It simply existed, vast and powerful, daring the galaxy to acknowledge it. The warship was both a warning and a promise. A warning of what humanity could do if challenged, and a promise that their silence would not last forever. The council speaker finally broke the moment with a single line, her voice fragile yet sharp. We must consider every possibility. It was the most cautious statement she had ever made, but it carried more weight than a declaration of war. Every possibility meant alliances shifting, treaties breaking, wars erupting. Every possibility meant fear spreading like cracks in glass. And the humans, still standing silent in their place, let the words hang heavy. Outside the chamber, beyond the core worlds, the warship drifted in the void. Its engines glowed with quiet restraint, its weapons dormant but waiting. The galaxy watched it with breath held tight, uncertain of what would come next. But in the shadows of human space, whispers began to take shape. There were rumors of fleets gathering, of hidden bases on forgotten moons, of engineers who had vanished from Council worlds only to reappear on Earth. If the Council was seeing one ship today, then somewhere out there more might already exist. The envoy finally sat down, a motion so small yet so final it felt like a closing door. The Council had seen enough, and though no shot had been fired, no treaty broken, everyone in that chamber knew one truth had been written into the stars. The age of underestimating humanity was over. Still, no one dared to ask the question aloud, though it burned in every mind. If the humans had chosen this moment to reveal themselves, what exactly were they preparing for? The answer remained hidden, just beyond reach, waiting in the silence that followed. The chamber did not recover quickly from the revelation. The image of the human warship still lingered in the minds of everyone seated there, like a scar across their collective thoughts. The delegates whispered in clusters, their voices low, but no amount of hushed tones could hide the weight of their fear. The speaker called for order, but even she knew her voice carried little power now. The balance of control had shifted. For centuries, the Council had been the ultimate authority, the judge of lesser civilizations, the keeper of stability. Now a young species had shaken that illusion with the simple act of standing still. Beyond the chamber's walls, the debate was already spilling into corridors and private channels. Representatives messaged their homeworlds in frantic codes, demanding new intelligence reports. Fleets were ordered to shift positions. Scouts were sent racing toward human space, hoping to uncover what the Council had missed. In the shadows of these hurried actions, new fears began to grow. What if the humans wanted this? What if the warship was not only a warning but bait, a lure to draw the galaxy closer to the truth they had worked so hard to hide? Inside the chamber, the human envoy remained calm, sitting now, hands folded. They didn't need to speak anymore. Their silence was louder than any declaration of war. Around them, the subplots of fear and ambition began to form. The Tesh, always hungry for expansion, wondered if humanity might become an ally, or a rival that needed crushing before it grew further. The Arek whispered of striking now, before more ships appeared. The Surat, proud and cautious, debated whether fear might be the wiser path. And among them all, smaller civilizations began to consider something unthinkable. Siding with the humans before the Council could turn on them, whispers turned into questions about humanity's past. It was not the warship alone that unsettled them, but the realization that they had never truly understood humans at all. Their history was known, yes, but only the surface of it, the wars on their homeworld, the cycles of destruction and rebuilding. But now the counselors wondered what else had been buried in those stories. What had the humans carried into the stars that had gone unnoticed? Were their myths and legends hints of something greater? Were the scars on their worlds not signs of weakness but lessons in survival written into the bones of their people? Reports began to surface of human colonies at the edges of mapped space, colonies that had always seemed too quiet, too self-sufficient. Perhaps those worlds had been more than they appeared. Perhaps they had been building, forging, preparing for this very moment. No one wanted to admit it, but the evidence was there. The warship had not sprung from nothing. It had been born from years of hidden work the Council had failed to notice. That failure was now the greatest wound of all. Some delegates demanded immediate answers from the humans, but the envoy gave none. Instead, they asked a single question that deepened the silence further. When you look at us, what is it you fear most? The question hung in the air like smoke. It was not defiance, but it forced every species in the chamber to confront their own unease. Was it the warship's weapons they feared? Or was it the thought that humanity had become something beyond their control? The Council speaker finally ordered a recess. Delegates scattered, each retreating to private rooms where the real discussions would take place. The chamber emptied, but the tension remained, pressed into the very walls. Outside, the great city that surrounded the Council hub buzzed with unease. Word was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Traders who had overheard fragments of the debate were already sending messages across the stars. Rumor would soon outpace truth, and rumor was more dangerous than fact. In one quiet corner of the city, a gathering of smaller races whispered about opportunity. For centuries they had lived under the shadow of the great powers, their voices ignored in the chamber, their fleets too small to matter. But humanity's rise might change that. A human alliance, some argued, could finally balance the galaxy. Others warned it could just as easily enslave them all. But the thought was alive now, and thoughts were seeds that could not be unplanted. Meanwhile, in hidden sectors far from the Council's gaze, humanity moved with quiet purpose. The warship revealed to the Council was not the only one. In dry docks carved into asteroid belts and hollowed moons, others waited. Engineers and crews worked tirelessly, their hands guided not by greed or conquest, but by memory of being. Underestimated, memory of loss, memory of promises ignored. Humanity's history was not just war, but a refusal to stay broken. Every ship built was a vow that they would never kneel again. Yet within humanity itself, debate also simmered. Some wanted open war, to strike before the Council could unite against them. Others urged patience, arguing that fear itself was the greatest weapon, that the warship's presence alone could fracture the alliances that had ruled the galaxy for ages. And there were those who worried quietly, wondering if the path they had chosen would lead only to destruction. But those voices were fewer, drowned by the tide of certainty that humanity's time had come. Back in the Council chambers, the speaker met with her closest advisors. They argued over responses, sanctions, military action, diplomacy. Every option carried risk. Attack too quickly, and the humans might reveal even greater strength. Wait too long, and their influence might spread unchecked. Some whispered of sabotage, others of secret deals. But the speaker knew the truth. The Council had already lost the one thing it relied on most. They had lost the illusion of control. Night fell over the city, though the stars beyond the dome still burned bright. In hidden halls, alliances began to shift. Old enemies sent quiet messages to each other, testing the possibility of cooperation against a new threat. Some debated whether humanity might be courted instead, brought into the fold not by force but by promises. Yet even in those talks, doubt lingered. Could humans ever be bound by the same rules that held the Council together? Or would they always walk their own path no matter the cost? Far away, the warship drifted in its silent orbit, its weapons dark, but its presence louder than any fleet. Its shadow fell across the galaxy not through destruction, but through possibility. What could humanity become if left unchecked? What would they demand when they finally chose to speak plainly? No one knew. And it was that not knowing that gnawed at the Council's heart. The envoy, returning to their quarters, paused at a window overlooking the city's spires. They knew the Council was shaken, knew that doubt now spread like cracks through their unity. That was enough for now. Humanity did not need to fire a shot to win the first battle. The war was already beginning, not in the stars, not with fleets, but in the minds of those who had thought themselves unchallenged. And still, the question hung unanswered in the void. If one human warship could bring the Council to silence, what would an entire fleet do? The galaxy would soon learn, but not yet. Not tonight. The silence was still the sharpest weapon, and humanity knew how to wield it well. The days that followed the revelation were unlike anything the Council had known in centuries. The great city that encircled the chamber pulsed with restless energy, whispers spreading through its corridors like wildfire. Traders carried rumors back to the rim worlds, and by the time the Council even began drafting an official statement, the galaxy was already alive with speculation. Everywhere the same questions were asked. How many warships did the humans have? What did they want, and how long had they been preparing? The Council's silence only made the rumors louder, and in that silence, fear took root. Behind sealed doors, the Council split into factions. Some demanded immediate action, arguing that hesitation would only embolden humanity. Others warned that moving too quickly could trigger a war they could not win. The most cautious voices said the galaxy should wait, gather intelligence, and discover just how much the humans had built. But even as these arguments tore the chamber apart, Fleets were already moving in secret. Border patrols shifted closer to human space. Carriers were quietly recalled from distant assignments, and agents were dispatched to probe the outer colonies, where whispers of hidden shipyards had surfaced. The humans knew. Somehow, they always seemed to know. Reports came back of Council scouts encountering navigation accidents, of surveillance drones vanishing without a trace, of supply convoys finding their routes suddenly blocked by gravitational storms that shouldn't have been there. Nothing could be proven, but the pattern was clear. Someone was watching every move, and that someone was human. Meanwhile, in the hidden reaches of their space, humanity gathered its strength. The warship revealed to the Council remained silent, a constant reminder hanging like a blade over the galaxy. But elsewhere, in the cold light of distant suns, other warships stirred. Dry docks glowed with activity, their skeleton frames filling out into the hulks of giants. Engineers whispered about designs that pushed the limits of known physics, weapons arrays capable of cutting through entire fleets. Crews trained in silence, waiting for orders that had not yet come. To the humans, secrecy was not weakness. It was survival. And survival was something they had mastered across all of history. Inside the council chamber, cracks widened. Delegates who had once boasted of their fleets now spoke with unease. The Surat, who had always believed themselves unconquerable, found themselves calculating losses aloud for the first time. The Tesh argued that perhaps humanity could be lured into an alliance, turned against old enemies. The Arek, pale and shaking, demanded preemptive strikes before the humans struck first. No one agreed, and that was the greatest danger of all. Unity, the very thing the Council had been built upon, was slipping away like sand through fingers. And then, a signal came. It was not from the warship that hovered at the edge of known space, but from deeper within human territory. A simple transmission, unencrypted, sent across open channels. No threats, no demands, only coordinates. A meeting place. A single line followed, spoken in a voice that carried the weight of certainty. "Come and see." The Council erupted. Some claimed it was a trap, an ambush waiting to destroy their ships. Others argued it was the only chance to understand what humanity truly wanted. After days of argument, a decision was made. A delegation would go. Not their strongest fleets, not their most vulnerable either. A mixed convoy of ships representing many races, carrying both diplomats and warships. It was a gesture of caution wrapped in arrogance, as though numbers alone could shield them from what awaited. The convoy set out under heavy escort, engines blazing through the dark. But as they crossed into the sector marked by human coordinates, the silence became heavier. No patrols, no colonies, no signals of life. Only empty space stretching wider with every jump. Some among the convoy began to whisper of ghost stories, of human fleets that moved unseen. Others laughed too loudly, trying to hide the way their hands trembled. At last they arrived, and what they found froze the words in their throats. Before them drifted a structure unlike anything they had seen. It was no single ship, no mere station. It was vast, a cathedral of steel and fire suspended in the void. Shipyards stretched across kilometers, cradling vessels in every stage of construction. Warships larger than the one revealed at the Council, their hulls still raw, their engines waiting for light. Smaller escorts hovered like hunters in a pack, their weapons alive with restrained power. It was not just one warship. It was a fleet still growing, still evolving, hidden in the darkness until now. The Council convoy halted, their sensors scrambling to take in the impossible. Some captains gripped their controls tighter, their instincts screaming to turn back. But the human ships did not move. They simply drifted, engines low, weapons quiet, their silence once again the sharpest weapon. And then the signal came again, the same calm voice across every channel. "You wanted to know what we are." Tension rippled through the Council delegation. Some whispered for retreat, others demanded parley. But before any decision could be made, the hollow feeds inside every Council ship flickered. The image of the human envoy appeared once more, their face calm, their eyes steady. They did not speak of war. nor did they offer peace. Instead, they asked a question that pierced deeper than any weapon. How long did you think we would wait? The silence that followed was unbearable. The council, captains looked to each other, their hands hovering near their controls. No one dared make the first move, for they all understood what a single misstep might mean. The humans had not fired, but they had shown their truth. They were no longer the overlooked, underestimated species the council once believed. They were builders, survivors, and now contenders. The council delegation sat trapped in that moment, hearts racing, unsure whether they were witnessing the beginning of an alliance or the first breath of war. And then, slowly, the warships in the human fleet powered their engines, not advancing, not retreating, simply moving, their formation shifting like a predator circling prey. The council ships adjusted nervously, their own formations faltering. Every second felt stretched, every heartbeat a drumbeat of approaching conflict. The envoy's image remained steady, unflinching. "You feared us as children," they said, their tone quiet but cutting through the noise of alarms and comms. "Now you see us as we are. Decide what that fear will make you do." The words landed like a blade across the council's divided heart. Some captains clenched their fists in anger, ready to strike. Others felt the cold grip of dread and whispered for retreat. In the council chamber back home, leaders argued desperately over what action to command, but their voices carried too slowly across the stars. The decision, in truth, was already in motion, hanging on the edge of a knife. The fleet of humanity moved closer, their engines burning brighter. The council convoy shifted again, weapons charging, shields rising. Every ship trembled with the anticipation of the first strike, knowing that once it came, there would be no turning back. And in that razor-thin space between action and silence, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. The humans had revealed their strength. The council had come to see, and now, at the edge of the unknown, both sides waited for the moment that would define the future of the stars. The warship that had first appeared above the council chamber moved into view, its colossal hull casting shadows across the human fleet. Its weapons arrays glowed faintly, not aimed but not hidden. The envoy's final words echoed across the comms, heavy and unyielding. "This is only the beginning." And then, silence. The council ships froze. The humans held their line and the galaxy stood on the brink of a decision that could ignite everything. The silence, after the envoy's final words, stretched on like a noose. Council ships hovered at the edge of human space, weapons humming faintly, shields raised, every captain knowing that one spark would unleash fire across the stars. The human fleet remained still, their warships lined like sentinels, engines glowing with restrained power. Both sides waited for someone to blink first, but before any command could be given, a new signal crackled through the void. It was not human, nor council. It was something else. At first, the transmission was dismissed as interference, but then the feed stabilized. Across every screen and holo display, an unknown insignia pulsed, a sharp, angular mark not belonging to any council, race. A voice followed, mechanical and cold, yet undeniably alive. "Your games end here." The words rattled through every ship, their meaning translated instantly into every language. The council delegation froze. The humans, for the first time, showed a flicker of reaction. The signal carried with it images, grainy, fractured scans of ships emerging from the dark beyond the rim. They were not council designs nor human. Their hulls were jagged, built not for elegance or survival but for something harsher. They moved in formation, disciplined and silent, engines flaring, with unnatural energy. And then the realization struck like lightning. These ships had been hidden even deeper than the humans' fleet. They were not new. They were old. Older than the council itself. The council delegation erupted in panic. Some shouted that it was a human trick, a staged display meant to frighten them further. Others whispered in terror that humanity was not the only secret in the galaxy. The humans themselves said nothing, but among their fleet, encrypted signals flared bright, coursing between ships with urgent speed. For the first time, the image of control wavered. Whoever these intruders were, the humans had not invited them. The mysterious fleet advanced. Not toward the council ships, not toward the humans, toward both. Their formation split into wings, surrounding the contested space with precision. Every vessel bristled with weapons, their arrays glowing with a harsh light that seemed unnatural, almost alive. The cold voice returned. The council rotted. Humanity grew in silence. Both forgot the truth. Now you will remember. Confusion tore through the council delegation. What truth? Who were these intruders to speak with such certainty? And why now, in this exact moment when the galaxy already teetered on the edge of war? The envoy's calm cracked for the first time. Their jaw tightened, eyes narrowing as though facing something far too familiar. It was a small shift, but the council saw it, and it terrified them even more. Because in that flicker of human expression, one truth became clear. The humans knew. They had known about this hidden enemy, or at least fragments of it. Perhaps their secret fleets had not been built only for the council, but for something worse. Something older that had waited in the shadows. The council had believed the humans prepared for rebellion. Now it seemed they had been preparing for survival against a threat no one else had seen. The intruder fleet drew closer. Sensors screamed as strange energy waves washed over both council and human ships. Shields flickered, engines stuttered. The weapons of the unknown fleet glowed brighter, feeding on a power that defied analysis. And then, across every channel, came a single chilling declaration. We are the first war. You are the forgotten children. The reckoning begins. The Council's greatest nightmare had never been humanity's rise. It had always been the possibility of an unknown. And now that nightmare had stepped out of legend into reality. The humans once underestimated no longer looked like the greatest danger. They looked like the only ones who might understand what was happening. That realization was a second wound to the Council's pride, one almost worse than fear itself. The envoy finally spoke, their voice stripped of calm, replaced with hard steel. You should not be here. It was directed at the intruders, not the Council. And those words confirmed what everyone already suspected. Humanity had known, perhaps for longer than anyone wanted to admit. Their secrecy, their hidden shipyards, their silence. It had not been only arrogance, it had been preparation for this. The Council shouted for explanations, demanding answers, but the envoy ignored them. Orders swept through the human fleet, engines roaring to life. For the first time, weapons arrays activated in full, their glow cutting across the void. Humanity, who had stood silent and still in defiance of the Council, was now moving, but not against the Council fleet, against the newcomers. The envoy's voice cut across the comms once more, this time carrying something different. Urgency. If you want to live, you'll fight with us. The Council reeled. The very species they had spent centuries containing, dismissing, even mocking, now stood as the only shield between them and something worse. Some captains bristled with pride, refusing to even consider fighting alongside humans. Others, more pragmatic, realized there was no choice. The intruder fleet's numbers grew with every scan, emerging from the void like a tide that would not stop. Alone, neither humans nor the Council could withstand it. Together, they might. But trust was poison in that moment. The Council had never trusted humanity, and humanity had never trusted the Council. To stand together meant lowering shields, opening comms, exposing weakness. No one was ready to make that leap, not with the memory of the warship still heavy in their minds. And yet, hesitation was death. The intruder fleet fired the first shot. A lance of energy cut through the dark, slicing into empty space between the humans and the Council. A warning, and a promise. The shockwave rattled ships for kilometers, systems screaming as energy washed across hulls. The voice returned, colder than before. Choose quickly. You will not be given another chance. The Council captains hesitated, their voices clashing. Overcomes. Attack the humans, retreat and abandon the sector, or join forces against this unknown threat. Each choice carried ruin. Humanity, meanwhile, had already chosen. Their warships surged forward, weapons blazing, striking the intruders with calculated precision. The void erupted with light as beams and missiles tore across the darkness, and in that instant, the Council realized that humanity was not asking for help. They were daring the Council to survive without them. Panic roared through the Council convoy. Some captains, driven by fear, moved to retreat. Others, unwilling to let humanity fight alone, ordered their weapons to fire. The result was chaos, a broken, uneven volley of shots streaking into the intruder fleet. It was not unity, but it was enough to draw the enemy's attention. The newcomers shifted formation, engines flaring brighter, weapons locking onto both human and Council ships alike. The battle had not yet begun in full, but the air was already thick with tension. This was no longer just about humanity's rise, or the Council's fear. This was about survival against a force older and more ruthless than either had imagined. Humanity's warship had been a revelation. The intruder fleet was a nightmare. And together, they had turned the galaxy's balance of power into something no one could control. The envoy's image flickered again across Council ships, their voice cutting through chaos with the force of command. You wanted to know what we were building. Now you see why. Their gaze hardened. Decide, Council. Do you stand with us or do you die with them? No answer came, not yet. The Council hung on the edge, torn between pride, fear, and the primal instinct to survive. The intruder fleet advanced, weapons glowing brighter, their numbers swelling as more ships slipped from the dark. Humanity pressed forward, engines burning, defiance written into every move. And caught between the two, the Council teetered, knowing that whatever choice they made in the next moments would shape the fate of the galaxy itself. The first true battle had not yet started, but the stage was set. Humanity's secrets were no longer the only danger. A second force had entered the game, one that promised annihilation not only to the Council but perhaps to humanity as well. And in that fragile, desperate silence before the storm, the galaxy held its breath, waiting for the fire to begin. The first shot of the battle tore the void apart. A Council destroyer, panicked by the growing glow of intruder weapons, fired a volley of torpedoes without orders. The warhead streaked past the human formation, exploding against the jagged hull of an enemy ship. The detonation was brief, a flash swallowed quickly by darkness, but it was enough. The intruder fleet answered in kind, unleashing beams of raw energy that cut through space like knives. One Council frigate vanished in an instant, its hull shattered into fragments that tumbled helplessly through the void. The silence ended. Humanity's fleet surged forward, warships unleashing their full power for the first time in the eyes of the galaxy. Cannons roared, missile bays opened, beams of focused energy lanced across the black. Their formation was precise, not the chaotic charge the Council expected. Each strike was calculated, every movement drilled into the crews long before this day. For the Council delegation watching in stunned disbelief, the message was undeniable. The humans had been preparing for this fight long before anyone else had known it was coming. The Council ships wavered. Some captains turned tail, engines burning, as they tried to retreat into safer space. Others, pushed by desperation or pride, aligned their weapons with humanity's, unleashing scattered volleys into the advancing enemy. The intruder fleet took the blows and answered with brutal efficiency, their weapons tearing holes through shields, their ships advancing without hesitation. They were disciplined, methodical, relentless. This was not conquest, it was extermination. Among the Council vessels, arguments flared across open channels. Some accused humanity of staging the entire thing, insisting these intruders were puppets built to frighten them into alliance. Others shouted that the time for pride was over, that survival meant standing shoulder to shoulder with humans, no matter the cost. The confusion nearly broke them, but then the human envoy's voice cut through every calm, firm and sharp. You wanted to know why we built in secret. Look outside your windows. This is why. You cannot win alone. Stand with us, or fall divided. The words carried weight, heavier than any order the council speaker had given. One by one, captains began to comply, weapons aligning with human targeting data, volleys timed alongside human strikes. The chaos became coordination. The council fleet, fractured moments before, now fought in rhythm with humanity's warships. It was uneasy, fragile, but it was enough to push back. The void became fire. Human warships surged ahead, their massive hulls bristling with cannons that spat destruction into the heart of the intruder fleet. Council ships filled the gaps, smaller vessels weaving between the giants, striking at flanks and exposed points. Explosions rippled across the dark as intruder hulls cracked, spilling fire into the endless night. For the first time, the enemy faltered, their advance slowing. But victory did not come. For every intruder ship that fell, two more seemed to emerge from the void, their jagged silhouettes appearing without warning. Their formation shifted with eerie precision, adjusting to losses faster than any council fleet could hope to. The humans pressed harder, engines screaming, but even their discipline strained against the endless tide. The battle was brutal, grinding, a clash where survival was measured not in triumph but in seconds. Then the twist struck like lightning. From the heart of the intruder formation, a massive vessel emerged, larger than the human warship that had first stunned the council, larger even than the dreadnoughts humanity had built in secret. Its hull pulsed with sickly light, its weapons arrays vast and alien, its very presence radiating power. The scans came back fragmented, overloaded by the energy it emitted. But one truth was clear. This was their command ship. The First Wars. Fear rippled through the council fleet. If the intruder flagship moved into full engagement, no alliance, no matter how desperate, could hold the line. Humanity's warships rallied, weapons charging for one last push, but even their crews knew the odds were breaking. The envoy's voice came again, harsher this time. That ship is the key. Strike it, and we have a chance. Fail, and none of us survive. The council speaker, her voice unsteady, finally gave the order no one thought she could. All ships support the humans. Target the flagship. It was the first time in history she had commanded unity, not against humanity, but with them. And so the galaxy's oldest powers and its youngest race hurled themselves side by side into the jaws of the storm. The flagship answered. Its weapons lit the void, beams lancing through fleets, tearing through council cruisers as though they were nothing more than fragile glass. Human warships pressed forward anyway, shields failing, hulls burning. A battleship took the brunt of a blast, splitting apart in silence, but its sacrifice opened a gap in the enemy's line. Through that gap surged the human dreadnought, the same warship the council had first seen. Engines blazing, it cut through the darkness, cannons roaring in defiance. The clash shook the void. Council frigates darted alongside the dreadnought, striking at the flagship's flanks. Human escorts shielded them, intercepting fire with their own bodies. The flagship reeled, its defenses flickering, but still it endured, its weapons cutting down ships with merciless precision. And just when hope seemed ready to break, the envoy's voice echoed one final time. Now, all together. Every ship, human and council alike, fired as one. Beams, missiles, torpedoes, and cannons merged into a storm of light that tore into the flagship's hull. The explosion was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, a blinding cascade that lit the void like a newborn star. The flagship cracked, shattered, and finally, it fell. Silence followed. The intruder fleet, once so relentless, faltered without their command. Some turned, engines burning retreat. Others fought on, but without coordination they were vulnerable. Humanity and the council pressed the advantage, driving them back ship by ship until the void was littered with wreckage and fire. The battle was won. Against all odds they had survived. But the final twist came in the aftermath. As the last of the intruder fleet scattered, fragments of transmissions were intercepted. Broken words, incomplete signals, but enough to chill the blood of everyone who heard them. They spoke not of defeat, not of despair, but of calculation. Test complete. Strength measured. Others will come. The realization struck harder than any weapon. This was not the war. This was the beginning. The intruder fleet had not come to conquer, but to probe, to test the galaxy's defenses. And now, they had their answer. The Council, exhausted and battered, turned their eyes to the humans. For the first time they saw not rivals, not children, not threats, but leaders. The humans had fought with discipline, with purpose, with a strength no one had expected. And they had known. Somehow, they had known this day would come. The envoy stood aboard the dreadnought, their uniforms scorched, their eyes hard. "Now you understand," they said quietly, but the words carried across every surviving channel. "You feared us because you thought we wanted your power. You were wrong. We built in silence because we knew this was coming. And it is not over." This was only the first wave. The Council could no longer deny it. Humanity had not risen to challenge them. Humanity had risen to save them. And in that revelation lay the final unexpected twist. The humans were not the danger. They were the shield. The galaxy's survival now depended not on the Council's centuries of dominance, but on the very species they had once dismissed. As reckless children. The void was quiet again, littered with the remains of ships and fire fading into embers. The war was not over, but the shape of the future was clear. Humanity had stepped into the center of the galaxy's stage, not as beggars, not as rebels, but as equals, and perhaps as the only hope against what was still to come. And somewhere, beyond the rim in the endless dark, more fleets stirred. The wreckage of the battle drifted like a graveyard, silent and endless. Human and Council ships floated side by side, scarred and battered, their lights dimmed but still alive. The great flagship of the intruders was gone, shattered into fragments of molten metal, but the words of its last transmission echoed through every surviving crew. "Test complete. Others will come." No one in the galaxy would forget those words, not now, not ever. The Council's survivors gathered their fleets in uneasy silence. Some ships limped away with broken hulls, their crews exhausted. Others remained near the human dreadnought, not out of trust but out of need. It was clear to everyone that the galaxy had changed forever. They had fought together, yes, but unity born in desperation was fragile. Old rivalries still lingered and pride still burned. Yet beneath that pride was something new, something heavier than fear. Respect. The human envoy stood once more on the command deck of their warship, surrounded by officers who looked worn and haunted. Their uniforms bore the smoke and scorch marks of survival. Around them, holoscreens flickered with casualty reports and fractured sensor data. Losses had been heavy, too heavy, but they had endured. That was what humanity always did. Endure. The envoy let the silence hang for a long time before speaking. "You saw it for yourselves. You know what waits in the dark. This was not the end. It was only the first strike." The Council speaker appeared on the main channel, her voice shaky but steadier than before. "You kept this from us," she said. There was no accusation in her tone, only weary acknowledgement. "You prepared in secret while we dismissed. You. And now, we understand why." Her eyes, tired and lined with grief, flicked to the images of the wreckage around them. "Perhaps we would not have listened even if you had told us." The envoy's gaze hardened, but their reply carried no triumph. "We could not risk it. You never trusted us. You feared what we might become, and because of that you were blind to what was coming." They paused, their voice heavy with memory. "We built in silence, because survival left us no choice. Humanity has always fought its wars alone. But this is not a war we can fight alone." For the first time, the chamber of the Council, patched through the feeds, fell into honest quiet. The arrogance that had defined them for centuries was gone, burned away in the fire of shared survival. The smaller races who had long been ignored now spoke up with trembling voices demanding that the Council adapt, that old divisions be put aside. Even the proud Surat, who had sworn never to bow to anyone, said nothing in defiance. They too had seen the truth. Without humanity's foresight, they would all be dead. As the fleets regrouped, the Council made a choice that would have been unthinkable only days before. They invited humanity not just to stand among them, but to lead the investigation into what remained of the intruders. No longer dismissed as reckless children, humans now carried the burden of guardianship. It was a role they had not asked for, but one they could not refuse. Back on Earth, the news spread like wildfire. For generations, humanity had fought for recognition, for respect, for survival. Now they were spoken of not as latecomers but as saviors. The sight of their warship leading a battered coalition back from the edge of annihilation became a story told in every corner of the galaxy. Yet humans themselves took little comfort in the praise. They knew what the Council did not fully grasp yet. The battle had been a test, nothing more. The real war still waited, and when it came, it would not give them the luxury of surprise. Among the smaller colonies, whispers turned to hope. Races long ignored by the Council began reaching out to humans, asking for alliances, for guidance, for protection. In the shadows of war, humanity had become something larger than itself, a symbol of resilience, a reminder that survival came not from arrogance, but from struggle. The humans accepted their requests cautiously, understanding that leadership carried as much danger as it did power. In the Council's chambers, debate raged about what came next. Some pushed for building a united fleet under human oversight. Others resisted, unwilling to hand so much influence to a species they had once mocked. But as arguments grew heated, the envoy silenced them with one final statement. You do not have to like us. You do not have to trust us. But you will stand with us, or you will fall alone. No one dared challenge the truth of those words. The war had forced a shift no one could undo. Humanity, once the outlier, now stood at the center of the galaxy's future. Their warship had been a revelation, their hidden fleets a shock, but their role in saving the Council had become undeniable. Even their enemies saw it. Respect had been earned not through diplomacy, not through treaties, but through fire. And yet, even as the wreckage of the intruder fleet cooled, unease remained. The intercepted transmissions haunted every captain and counselor alike. Others will come. It was not a threat, it was a promise. Somewhere beyond the rim, more fleets gathered, perhaps larger, perhaps stronger. The thought hung like a shadow over every discussion, every plan. For humanity. That shadow was familiar. They had always lived with the knowledge that danger never truly ended, that survival was not a gift but something fought for day by day. Now the galaxy would learn the same lesson. In that way, humanity had never been young. They had always carried the weight of struggle. It was only now that the rest of the stars began to understand. In time, the fleets dispersed. The Council returned to its core worlds, scarred and humbled. Humanity returned to its hidden yards, already beginning repairs, already building more. The alliance that had formed in desperation did not dissolve, but it did not solidify into trust either. It was something fragile, something in between, an uneasy unity forged in fire, waiting to see if it could endure the storms yet to come. The envoy stood once more at the viewport of their ship, staring into the endless dark. Their reflection looked older, burdened by what had been revealed and what still lay ahead. Around them, the crew worked in silence, tired but unbroken. The envoy whispered words not meant for recordings, not meant for history, but for themselves alone. We bought time, nothing more. And perhaps that was the truest victory of all, not a triumph, not a final end, but time. Time to prepare. Time to unite. Time to face the storm that was coming. Humanity had forced the galaxy to see them, not as children, not as rebels, but as equals. And now, together or divided, they would all face what waited beyond the stars. The galaxy would remember this battle not as an end but as a beginning, and humanity, scarred and tempered, would carry its burden forward, because that was what they had always done. The stars burned quietly, indifferent as always. The war was not over, but for the first time, the galaxy was ready to face it with Open eyes, and somewhere deep in the cold, the remnants of the intruder fleet whispered to one another in the silence of the void. Watching. Waiting. Preparing. The humans had passed the test.